Hello, this is Jim DuBois with another entry in the CIO Water Cooler Global CIO series. Today, we're talking with Harry Moseley, CIO at Zoom. Harry, how are you doing today?
Good, Jim. Absolutely terrific. Nice to see you. Been a long time.
It has probably not as long as it feels like with so much happening today.
Yeah, it's hard to believe. It's like, I was just talking to somebody earlier this morning. I joined Zoom 8 months ago, and quite honestly, it feels like yesterday. I mean, like, where's all this time gone? You know, I think like it feels like I missed the summer somehow. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure that so much has happened though. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how that's different from your role at KPMG and what are the biggest things that jumped out to you as being different?
Yeah, so there's a variety of differences. Sort of one being the size of the company. I mean, when you look at Zoom, we're a little over 1,000 employees on a global scale. My IT organization at KPMG was like bigger than this entire company. So that's kind of like intellectually interesting. Um,
what that's felt like. What are some of the things that are really different about it?
It's like, I'm working for a technology company now as opposed to a professional services or a financial services firm like I did in my background. And so, and I fundamentally believe, by the way, that like every company is a tech company, irrespective of the industry. And I know you agree with that. When you look at sort of things like Tesla, it's an automotive company, but it's a tech company, right? When you look at Spotify, it's a music streaming service, but it is a tech company. Airbnb, another tech company. Uber, another tech company, etc. These are all tech. So actually working for a real tech company like Zoom, where we're sort of software engineers at our heart. We are passionate about software. We're hardware agnostic. We're not a hardware company. We don't manufacture anything. It's truly fantastic, and the product is like amazing, and the culture is amazing. It's great to work with a very young organization where sort of Eric Yuan and 45 engineers founded this company a little over 7 years ago, been in the market for about 5 years. And when you look at the trajectory that this company is on, this is, sort of, as I say, not a hockey stick, this is a rocket launch.
Right.
We have over, 1 million business net promoter score, 72, highly rated by, Gartner in the Magic Quadrant. You got G2 Crowd as an example, showing sort of where the feedback has been 100% on satisfaction and 90% on momentum. It's like and then there's like everybody else is like behind, so we're like way ahead. And then number 3, Forbes 100 Cloud.
Yeah.
And then you look at Eric as a leader, sort of rated number 1 CEO by Glassdoor. I mean, it's just amazing. It's just this. I'm very proud about sort of all my roles before and the organizations I worked for. They were all terrific. They were all great, but this is just so different and energizing.
It's so great to be part of an organization with a leader like that and the culture that you can do so much more. And the whole unified communications industry is changing so fast. So talk a little bit about that. How much it's changing, what it's enabling for companies to do with more remote workers, or.
Yeah. So a couple of data points. Last year, 4 billion people took flights. The world's population is about 7.6, 7.7 billion. So basically, sort of putting that into context, almost 50%, over 50% of the world's population took a flight last year. It's like, obviously that didn't happen, but because you were probably on I don't know, 20 of them. I was probably on like 20 or 30 of them. So so that's an interesting data point. You look at the fact that by the middle of 2019. 32% of the world's population will be Gen Z, or for our British colleagues, Gen Z. And 31.5% of the world's population will be millennials. So 5 billion people in the world are sort of millennials, Gen Z. This is a population of people that, as I say, grew up on glass, sort of grew up on these devices, right? Grew up on a world of running on Wi-Fi, grew up on a world which is, all about mobility. They grew up in a world which, sort of experienced, sort of great terror, both cyber and physical terror. And they grew up through, one of the biggest financial crises we've ever experienced. But they're also sort of like it's a world of instant gratification, and it's a world of, so as I say it now, I'm sure, you with your kids, like me with my kids, if you email them, that was a waste of time. It was a waste of time sending them an email, writing the email.
But if you calling and leaving a voicemail, they'll never listen.
Exactly. It's like, you're much better off texting them, and then you get an instantaneous response, right? Yep. So especially as like, what's on your wish list for your birthday? That even, that will certainly get a response. So yeah. So and so you take all of this data together, and what does it mean? And then you take, sort of, even I think it was like this week, sort of looking at the number of jobs that are posted. So there's more jobs than there are people, so to speak. So you can't hire people in your sort of local geographic area anymore. So you have to go further afield. You got to go national, and you got to go global. But when you do that, how do you sort of keep the people connected? You can't be putting them on planes, and sort of just doing an audio call where you can't like see anybody. It's it's not an immersive experience. So what we say at Zoom is like, video is the new voice. Mm-hmm. And and look at that. It's like, I'm looking at you, I'm talking to you, you're nodding. So it's kind of like, I know, it's like I can see the agreement. When you can't see that, it's like I can't hear you.
Yeah.
I remember earlier in my career, when I put in a high def video conferencing system a little over 10, 12, 13 years ago, I got a call from our CEO, and he called and said, look, I just wanted to call you and say thank you. That video conferencing system is absolutely amazing. And when I said, why was this so important? He said, because when I'm asking a partner on the other side of the world a really hard question, yes, I'm intellectually interested in hearing the answer, but I want to see the answer. Because when I ask that hard question, the body naturally will, sort of show an inflection of that answer. And it also means you can go much faster as well. In addition to that, you want it to be seamless, you want it to be frictionless, you want ease of use, you want reliability, etc. And so we bring all that to the table.
And you're doing some other innovations around making the experience better. I have to just give you a plug with what you were showing us just a minute ago in the backgrounds, because actually behind you right now is just a green screen. Not all the Zoom thing, and you can change it easily to whatever you wanted. That was fascinating when you think about really having an immersive experience and being able to bring in any background. So now you've gone back to your just green screen.
Just my green screen, and but Golden Gate Bridge, moonshot, right here we are. Or the beach, right? So it feels like fun now, right?
So you can actually innovate on the experience and make it be something that is much more engaging, and you don't have people on their phones in the meetings. They're actually engaged.
Yeah.
That's going to actually enable this remote work much better.
Yeah, so a bunch of things. Like one about the green screen is like, it's a nice icebreaker, and especially when you put up the logo of your company, and if you imagine I was pitching to you and I put up your logo, it already shows engagement, right? So and it takes all the noise out. So if you're at an airport, you don't want to see all these people coming out. And let me just do this, Jim. This is like, I always love doing this. So let me.
Should I be afraid?
What's that?
Should I be afraid?
No, don't be afraid. It's like, it just shows evidence of how cool our technology is, and how easily it works, and how reliably it works. So here we go. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. I'm now in London. And We're going to change my location. So I'm now at the Oculus in Manhattan. How's that?
Wow. And you're using your mobile in addition to what you had been using a minute ago, because I can see both.
Yes, I joined the call from my phone. Yeah, just to so we and that's one of so as I said before, we're software engineers at our heart. So we're platform agnostic: Android, iOS, Windows, Mac, Linux, VDI, web, etc. So you have the same capability, and I can actually So let me just do one other thing when I come back on my phone, just for the fun of it, just to show the true that this really, we have this saying at Zoom, and our clients say it just works. So here I am back on my phone, and I can share content right off my iPhone. So we'll just share something that's not too controversial. So this is an article from the local newspaper, and I can zoom in on my phone.
Yeah. Great.
So, and I can annotate.
Yeah. Yeah. That just makes it that much more of an immersive experience to really be engaging, to bring those remote workers together.
Yeah. And it's all about sort of like the speed. It's like, the speed and the ease of use, but it's also the speed of how we want to work in our businesses, sort of nationally and globally.
And that speed is really important with the pace of change in the world today.
Yeah. It's like there isn't enough time, there isn't enough people. And so anything, we can do to sort of bring people together virtually and make that an immersive experience, that's what we're all about. And we've done lots of innovations at Zoom, sort of, it's very common today, sort of for people to do content sharing. So we offer sort of 2 laptops sharing in the same Zoom meeting. It's the notion of walking into a Zoom room and not sort of fiddling around to figure out which dongle you have to use. It's like, just instant sharing using sonic communications.
And that's applicable to, everybody listening has got something that they could simplify from the experience to make everything faster and a better.
Yeah. It's the notion that people sort of use their laptops to sort of make notes. We actually will silence the keyboard on the call. We detect the clicking of the keys, and we will silence that. And it's all, it's all, and then, sort of one of the things I love to talk about is, our technology, and you being a technologist, you love it too. Everything we do is in the Amazon cloud until you sort of start that meeting. And when you start the meeting, you move out of the Amazon cloud into one of our 13 data centers around the world. 2 calls going on in the data center for failover, 2 simultaneous calls. And then we manage all those endpoints on a discrete basis. And we look at the network connection to each of those endpoints as a discrete connection. And as part of that, we look at the jitter, we look at the latency, we can handle up to 45% packet loss. And we look at the endpoint, and we look at your operating system, and we look at the camera, we look at the microphone, we look at the speakers using, we look at the operating system and the patch level. So we look at all of this, and we look at the CPU utilization that's going on, so that we can sort of ensure that we're not passing down too many frames that you can't process. And we always prioritize audio over video and content over video, so you always have a great experience. So there's a reason we have a net promoter score of 72, which is like, and you're one of the people in the world that will understand exactly how hard that is to achieve.
That's super hard, absolutely. Tell us more about how the cloud has enabled all of that experience that you're talking about.
Yeah, so using the cloud has sort of incredible, provides us with incredible opportunities in terms of like being able to burst, being able to expand, being able to scale up, down as we need it. But our secret sauce is actually in. So we operate our calls out of our data centers because we don't want sort of a good experience necessitates sort of great reliability, great resiliency, and great control over every aspect of that call. Now, we can't control what you do on your endpoint, but we do control everything that goes on in our 13 data centers, and all that iron in there is owned, operated, maintained, and supported by Zoom professionals. And the network connectivity between the data centers. So, if you're in California, you most likely joined our San Jose data center. I'm in New York, connected to the New York data center. The guys in London connected into the Amsterdam data center. And all these data centers then are connected to each other. So you only have single streams of content going between them. And we want to control all that, but you can't control all that if that is actually going on in the Amazon cloud.
Yeah. Well, and you're hitting on something that is applicable to everybody. It's figuring out the piece, the secret sauce piece that you uniquely need to control, and then the other stuff you can push into the cloud so that you can take advantage of the commodity. And I think
Absolutely.
that's
that's the recipe. And it's like, a big part of my role, which I love, is I love talking to other CIOs and in enterprises, and more organizations are basically their cloud migration is everything that's not critical to our day-to-day operation. Well, not critical is probably an exaggeration. So everything that sort of isn't our secret sauce, we're pushing out into the cloud. But
there's things you can push out, but there's things you need to focus on uniquely. Yeah.
Which is like in one case, I was talking to a financial services firm. So their wealth management, they're keeping on-prem. You think about trading and sales. You're never going to put trading and sales out to the cloud because you want to own every aspect of that. But you'll put your HR systems out. You can put your financial reporting systems out. You can put all those sorts. You can put your training systems out. Because if there's any variability on that, it's not going to impact your day-to-day core business value proposition.
Yeah. So let me switch to another question, and it does build off of this, but there's been a tremendous amount of disruption happening over the last few years, and you have I think a unique perspective on seeing how some companies are being disrupted and some are doing the disrupting. Maybe give us your take on how do you be one of the disruptors as opposed to being disrupted?
Yeah, well, sort of, it's not about where the business is, but it's about where the business is going and will be. And so, sort of, I remember when I was considering to join Zoom, it's like I, sort of took a look at like a variety of different platforms that were out there, and it's kind of like, and they were all like okay, but okay only gets you so far. And when you go back to what we were talking about before, with the being able to recruit and retain people locally, nationally, globally, okay wasn't going to work anymore because the consumer world, so to speak, has taught us all that mediocre doesn't work. We want excellent, and so I remember saying to myself, it's kind of like it's kind of like these guys at Zoom have really disrupted a legacy environment, which is fascinating. It's like because your logic would say, why would you go and build something when you got all these other platforms out there? Well, because all these other platforms that are out there are legacy, built on legacy environments, built on where things were, not where things are. And this is a whole new environment that has sort of sprung up, and it's truly fascinating. But then there's been a lot of disruption, like you said, in the travel, entertainment, hospitality. I mean, it's
biggest hotel in the world. Biggest chain based on number of rooms now, Airbnb, and they got them so quickly, very disruptive.
So it's and I think that's going to continue. It's it's like sort of change is inevitable, right? Yep. You either adopt it or you're going to get run over by it, but it's inevitable. So You're better off leveraging and engaging as opposed to trying to avoid it.
Yeah. Well, and the pace of change seems to be accelerating. And you were talking before about how our kids are, grew up on these devices, but it was only a little over 10 years ago that the first iPhone, the first app store were released. So you think about the amount of change that's happened just in the last 10 years. And really, it's only been a little over 20 years that the internet started becoming useful. So that amount of change in the last 10 to 20 years, with the pace of change increasing, we're going to see that much change again in the next 5 to 10 years. Give us your view on what some of that's going to look like. What are some of the changes that we could expect in the next 5, 10 years?
I think there's a lot of people who are scared about sort of automated intelligence, machine learning, natural language programming, AR and VR, etc. On the other hand, I do think that some of the innovations in those spaces are truly remarkable. The notion that, a surgeon can put on lenses and be able to sort of drag that 3D image of, sort of the brain of this patient that they're going to operate on, so they have sort of real sort of precision about what to do. Really fascinating stuff.
And some things that are going to really make a difference in people's lives. So I was looking at one yesterday that was for people that are blind, and it actually, was seeing the world, doing the image recognition around them and talking in their ear what they were seeing as they turned their head, and overlaying that with map technology to help them walk places. And it was just some of the things that are possible are so cool. But then, as you were saying, there's some things that could be a little scary.
Yeah. I mean, I don't like the idea of like drones delivering packages. Quite honestly, I don't, sort of single passenger devices that, you sit outside your house and will, fly me down to the village. It's like, I don't know how I feel about all of this sort of stuff. But on the robotics thing, I think that, sort of there's a lot of great stuff going on in that space. And as somebody said to me recently, a lot of people are scared about sort of all this robotics that it's going to take all their jobs away. And as we said before, there isn't enough people to fill all the jobs. And it's sort of, and these robotics and the AI is all about elevating people so they can have more fulfilling careers.
Right.
But
right now there are, like you were saying, there's more jobs than people. So we do need to figure out something.
Yeah.
But clearly there's a lot that is possible.
Yeah. And as somebody said to me recently, it's like no one ever complained when the dishwasher was invented.
Right.
So,
yeah. And there are a lot of, but it's been happening for, not just years, for decades, centuries, that as innovation happens, new jobs are created. And we just have to make sure that the pace of change doesn't outpace the ability to do that. I think.
Yeah, but it is rather astonishing what we can do today. And sort of if you think about sort of the startups, it's like it's. I was talking to somebody at dinner, or I think it was Monday evening, and I did a startup much earlier on in my career. I had to buy and I had to buy a mini computer. That mini computer cost almost $99,000. Right, I had to go rent a space, and then when I rented the space, I had to sign a 3-year lease. And then I had to wire the space, right, and all that sort of stuff. And today you think about it, if you and I sort of agreed at 3:00 this afternoon, Eastern time, that we wanted to go and do a startup, at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, we could have our servers spun up. Yep. And how much would it cost us? It would have been, a swipe of the Amex card, right? Yep. We could have an agreement in place, and we'd be working out of like as an example, a WeWork location. Somewhere. We'd have internet, we'd have power, we'd have environmentals, we'd have coffee, beer at the end of the day, security, heat. Yeah. we could start development at like 9:05.
Yeah, it's amazing, amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. Given that your different kinds of roles that you've had, give all the CIO water cooler listeners some advice on what do you think they should be thinking about today to be ready for all this change, to be ready for what's coming in the future?
Yeah. So it's when I do reflect on my career, so to speak, I think that's what you're asking. When I reflect on my career, it's very I'm very humbled by it, and met so many wonderful people throughout my career who have supported me, either sort of executives in terms of supporting the objectives, people on the team, people on their teams, etc. So it's been a very humbling experience. I think sort of there's certain sort of elements which are, I believe, sort of critical today as they were in the past. Being passionate, being enthusiastic. Is the glass half full or the glass is half empty? As Shimon Peres wrote in his book, there are optimists and there are pessimists. Both die in the end, which is a fact. Why would you want to go through life as a pessimist, being miserable and downtrodden? Wouldn't you rather go through life as an optimist, where you're positive and enthusiastic and enjoying every day and seeing the glass is half full and how do you fill it up? Yeah. So I think you have to really enjoy what you do, and if you don't, then go find something that does because it's we spend more time at work than we do almost in any other part of our lives, and so if you're not loving it and enjoying it and feel like you're making a contribution, one of the things I've always said to people I've worked with is like it's really important at the end of the day to reflect on the day and to think about what would have happened had you not gone to work today. What would not have got done? Yeah. And some days you're going to find it's like, oh, that day was a write-off. Okay, so that just happens. You're not well. There's other things on your mind from a personal perspective that distract you. But most days you will come up with like, these are the things that happen. I moved things forward. And I think it's all about, just putting your head down and doing the best you can. I think sort of, did I 20 years ago say I wanted to be the CIO of a technology startup like Zoom? No, I did not. It's like, I always sort of focused on what was in front of me and sort of moving forward like you. You've had a fantastic career as well. What would you advise our listeners?
So I totally agree. I think the passion, the optimism, I think that there is the culture that we talked about that you've got there, that I think everybody can be part of making a more positive culture and pushing for that and leading with examples to help people be able to embrace the pace of change that's needed to be successful. And I think that I'll just reemphasize your points of, just keep pushing forward and focus on the great things that are happening and not the failures, other than being able to learn from them to keep going faster.